So guys, as it turns out, Fantasy Battle Royale is actually real, and what you're seeing on screen is going to be some actual gameplay of the mode. Now, this is PUBG's newest game mode addition for April Fools, and you may remember, if you've been watching the channel, a couple of weeks ago, I suggested that during the leaks of this, it was probably going to be some sort of elaborate April Fools prank to get at people who like to dig in the code and make them look like fools, essentially, right? And I thought that's what was going on. I didn't expect it to be in the actual mode, but lo and behold, it is real. And I gotta say, this is literally one of the weirdest modes of all time. I'm going to be talking about exactly what it is and how it works, so if you guys end up enjoying the video, drop a like rating, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure to watch all the way through the end so you can let me know what you think of it down below after you've kind of let it soak in. But what exactly is Fantasy BR? This is PUBG's newest mode where it's going to be full of 80 players and air and go only and third person as well, and essentially this is PUBG's take on a hero-based or like class-based battle royale, but there's not really any guns in here, right? All of the classes come with their own unique setup. So the barbarian, what I'm playing right now, comes with a really big sword, and that's basically it. He's the brute force melee guy. There's a wizard, there is a ranger, and also a paladin, and each one of these 4 unique classes come with their own equipment, weapons, and ways that they can be played, and different crafting items as well. Now, the crafting system is incredibly unique, right? All of the loot that you find within the map are gems, and they are gems that are specific to each class. They all have their own individual color, and there are like protection stones, and there's also power stones that you want to gather, and these will either upgrade your rings, your necklace, or your weapon, and you essentially rank up each one of those 3 items, ideally to level 5. And each level you get with these pieces of equipment will grant you a higher capability in all of those. So for example, if you upgrade the ring, it's going to give you potentially a bit more movement speed and make your cooldowns a bit faster. And when you upgrade your weapon, of course, it's going to have way more capability. For example, a very cool one is the Ranger's crossbow. Now, we know the crossbow in PUBG, you fire it once and you have to rebolt it, but after upgrading it with the Ranger class, you can fire it potentially multiple times before having to reload, and it is incredibly useful for taking out people at a distance. You need a Ranger on your team, in my opinion. And although I think the Rangers are incredibly useful, my favorite class out of all the 4 has to be the Wizard, because you get just an unbelievable amount of firepower at your disposal. You can throw Molotovs, you can shoot the flare gun, which actually deals damage. It shoots a projectile that explodes when hit on the ground, and you can shoot multiple of these and really have infinite ammo as long as you space your reloads. The problem with that class is the base health is incredibly low, so you do need to craft a lot of items to even have like a decent baseline health, or you will get smoked. And it's very clear the game is designed for you to have one of each class on your squad, although it does give you the freedom to pick whatever you want, and potentially you can have multiple of the same class on your team, which granted, I don't exactly recommend that, but it does give you the freedom if you choose to do so. Now, vehicles are actually still part of this. The UAZ and the bike are still in Fantasy BR, although they're renamed. The UAZ is called the Dragon Wagon, and then the bike, I believe, is called the Noble Steed, if I'm not mistaken, and they look different, they even feel different, and their top speeds are capped at much slower than you're going to be used to, and this is more to focus on actual, like, fighting with your abilities and stuff, because they don't want every game just to be a vehicle fight, which it kind of more or less sometimes is. They're a really good option just to drive around and even hit other incoming squads or third-party people with. So vehicles are an absolute must-have in this, and you also need them for transportation, because the blue does a lot more damage than you're used to as well. This is to sort of bring players together and keep people from camping in the zone, and it also is to compensate for the amount of healing that some of these characters are capable of. The Paladin can literally rescue you at pretty much any point in the game, even if you are in like a late blue zone, so you want to make sure you have a healer on deck as much as possible. Now let's talk about how you actually upgrade your gear to level 5, because basically everything can be upgraded just through regular looting to your class's specific gems, but in order to get to level 5 you need a special white gem called a Zircon, and they spawn very rarely on the ground, and there are absolutely a guaranteed item inside of airdrops. So essentially, once you have your weapon, your necklace, and ring all level 4, you'll need a Zircon for each of these to fully push them to 5. And they are worth it because normally upgrading with the Zircon gives the biggest jump to the best of that piece's of equipment's ability, and you see the most improvement. So they are worth collecting, and you certainly want to pick them up if you come across airdrops. Now, speaking of airdrops, these do spawn in sort of regularly like how they always do. However, this time they're marked on the map for everybody to see, so they become a point of contention for a lot of people, honestly. The airdrops do guarantee Zircon gems though, so you'll never have to come across one that's empty, and if you interact with the airdrop using F, then you get an invincibility buff for roughly 30 seconds. So it's honestly best just to be aggressive and push the crate first, because if you're essentially the first one there, then you'll most likely take it over and win that gunfight. Overall, the concept of this fantasy BR is pretty easy to understand. You pick a class, you upgrade it through looting, and then you try to have level 5 and then try to, I guess, be the last one alive. It's pretty simple and straightforward. But the question then becomes, why did they make this, and what are the greater implications? Because what I think is interesting is they include a lot of things that we've talked about in the past that we've only seen in fantasy BR. For example, the Brawler class has a healing item that is literally the Mega Energy Drink, and we have talked about that, I guess, for probably like a year now. We've known this is something that was developed, but we never saw it in the game. When the vending machines got added to PUBG, we figured it would probably come with that, but it didn't. However, the Mega Energy Drink is in this, and so we know that it's in fact done. It does exactly what we think. Instantly heals you, and then, continues to do so over time. It's a great item. Also, the Riot Shield is in Fantasy BR, and you may not even know it. The Paladin's, circular shield on his arm is the actual mechanic of their Riot Shield, and they even mention it in this dev letter. This is what they have to say about the Riot Shield. Utilizing fantasy classes such as the Paladin had the added bonus of finally letting us test a certain shield we teased out to you all a little too soon. A reasonable question you might have about this is why would they spend the resources and time developing this really silly mode that maybe some people are going to play, but a lot probably aren't and won't even touch it? It's weird, it's fringe, it's goofy. Why did they even spend the manpower creating this? Well, they say in their own words that this apparently didn't take up a lot of extra resource time. They were able to use just slight recodes and just all of the assets that were already in the game for the most part and just retool them to some degree. Apparently, this didn't take a hefty amount of development time, and they're still able to focus on the pressing issues that are unfixed, as that's what they say anyways. It's pretty clear to me that they don't want us to take this fantasy BR too seriously anyways. They want us to know that they're still working on the real pressing issues that the game is facing, and that they're going to be releasing some kind of community dev letter next week, and should give us a pretty substantial update about what they're doing. But it's kind of weird to me how this is an April Fool's joke, but they actually went through with it, because typically with video games and even with PUBG, they'll have an April Fool's joke set up, and then it's just JK. What if this did happen? For example, last year they released the fake patch notes that the moon was coming out, and it was this is a good joke. But this year they followed through with it, and they made an actual fully fledged fantasy BR game mode to play for April Fools. And honestly, you kind of gotta respect that. Initially, when this game mode was announced, I was utterly confused. I was just what are they doing? It was just baffling to me. But after spending some time with it and really not taking it seriously at all, just trying to enjoy myself, I gotta say, I surprisingly really like this game mode. And I know by me saying that is going to be a bit controversial, because some of you might just be repulsed looking at this, but again, it's important to keep context in mind. This is literally an April Fool's joke game mode, but just take it in for what it's supposed to be. They really didn't have to create any new assets for this. It seems like everything already existed in the game is just slightly rearranged, so it's still like PUBG that just I guess with a very different rule twist, and I gotta say, it's pretty enjoyable for what it is. But I do believe this is gonna have impacts on what they decide to do with content going forward, because they mentioned this. Fantasy BR has given us the opportunity to test a few new ideas in a real environment. A big part of Battle Royale is survival, and we've been curious on what crafting on the Battlegrounds might look like. Of all the systems that I think Fantasy BR is bringing that could potentially end up in the real game, crafting seems like the most likely and obvious one. In my opinion, fantasy crafting absolutely works in this silly mode, but how would that translate over to the real PUBG game mode? What would we even be crafting, and how would that all go down? I think this opens up a completely new discussion of a new system that PUBG could add, because it's been a while since we've had any real twists or turns to the meta of this game in terms of anything beyond just simple weapon balancing or whatever. Crafting could bring an entirely new skill set to the game that's never been seen before, and they're only really starting to get a hang of it in this Fantasy BR. So if you would want to see crafting in the real game mode, let me know, and what particular things do you think should be craftable if you have any ideas for that? Pay attention to this mode because a lot of the stuff tested in here may end up making its way to real PUBG. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But basically, they say that's the basic rundown. We sincerely hope you enjoy Fantasy Battle Royale. It's silly, short-lived, and certainly not for everyone. But those who appreciate such things, the happiest of April Fool's Day to you all. So as far as I know, this game mode is going to be around for a couple more days. If you haven't had the chance to try it out yet, I recommend you do and just try and have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously because it's not really a game mode for you to take nearly as competitively as you would standard PUBG, but it is just kind of sheer enjoyment. Like it's just PUBG, but way more silly, and I kind of like that. Like it's some well-needed fun that we haven't had in a while. So I recommend you go check it out, guys. If you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to give it a like rating, subscribe if you are brand new to the channel, and make sure to go follow me over on Twitch where my live streams are going to be. Link to that is down below inside the description. But I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream or the next video. Have a good one, everyone, and peace out.